Hey guys, BMI here today with a deck profile and also a reflection on the year 2025. So, as some of you might know already, I'm this year's national champion for the OCE region, which does mean that I'll be participating in the World Championship next year, where I'll be hopefully putting together a good result and making the region proud. So, I'm definitely really looking forward to that. So, in terms of 2025 as a whole, as I look back, I managed to win my first regional championship for Dragon Ball Fusion World in Melbourne this year. And so at that time, I thought it was a long time coming. And it was also very difficult because I had to verse the previous national champion in the final round in order to get that victory in the first place. And he was on Deadku. And he was probably the best Deadku player in Australia as well. So I was already really happy to achieve that result. And then after that, I managed to win the regional championship for Sydney. And then I won the regional championship in New Zealand consecutively. So all of a sudden, I went from 0 to 3 wins in a row, which is kind of crazy to be honest, right? And then I skipped Brisbane. So Brisbane was because I had the digital online quarterfinals at the same time, and that one could potentially qualify you to the World Championship. And so unfortunately, I was just one game off qualifying to the semifinals of that. And look, honestly, I think the practice that I had during that time was some of the best I've ever had across many card games. It was like kind of crazy how many of the top players throughout the world, especially from Japan, they were grinding like crazy. And so I felt like I was learning a lot every single day, even though, this deck, like, you'd think, oh, I've learned all there is to learn. And then you would sort of learn more. And so, yeah, I was playing Science Shenron or Omega Shenron during that time as well. So I learned a huge amount about this deck when I was grinding online. And then obviously after that, national championship. So this one was a bit of an interesting story, I think. But basically, I ordered a case of SBO2 because I wasn't sure if like the game would power creep like it did in SBO1. But as it turns out, this new set didn't really power creep anything, right? Like the same decks were still the top decks, but it introduced maybe some meme decks, right? Like Namaku and Frieza. And so like these decks are playable, but they're like obviously tier 3, right? And so effectively, this is kind of worse for Omega Shenron because this deck doesn't do the best into aggro, especially Frieza and Giblet and Namaku, right? And so two of these decks got newly introduced with this set, and so it actually made bringing this a little bit worse compared to Cell, which has a good matchup into all of those. And so at the start of the season, when I was playing ladder, I actually got a 22 win streak playing Cell, and then somehow I started losing after that. But irrespective, Cell was definitely a deck that I was really on the fence about bringing because of the fact that it was either Omega Shenron or Perfect Cell. And so I didn't even make that decision up until maybe 2 days before I flew out. So I think it was around Thursday that I decided I was definitely going to bring Omega Shenron. And that was just because like I was getting very good results on the ladder. And in fact, it was on Friday, the day I flew out, where I was able to get I think it was a rank 5 position on the ladder. And this was actually above Aqua, who's another Australian player. So I felt really comfortable going to nationals because, I knew that I practiced a lot and like the results kind of showed that already. And of course, just in general, I was really attuned to Omega Shenron in general. Plus, you know what they say about learning, where like one of it's like listening, and then the other one is kind of like actually writing down like what you're learning and all that. So I actually ended up writing a guide for the Shenron, and I wrote that only for one person. That was Cirrus, who came ninth actually, and I have no doubt in my mind that he would have come even better if we didn't face each other in the final round of Swiss. So just some fun trivia, I guess, but also very sad because even though he came ninth place, and this was when he was like X2, right? And only one X2 made it, and it was unfortunately Ryan or Aqua that made that, as opposed to Charlie. So yeah, I think in a different world, like he definitely makes a deep run as well. So I just kind of sad in that respect. In terms of the tournament itself, so I did make a pretty big mistake, which is basically the night before we decided we would test a little bit. So we went out to get drinks, just like hydration, not like alcohol, obviously. And so, I didn't want to pay those ridiculous convenience store prices. So I was like, oh, screw it. Like, we'll just buy bubble tea, right? And so I ordered like a fruity one, and basically, I didn't realize there was probably black tea, and so I drank that, and like this was like 11 p.m. So I was like, okay, whatever. It's not going to be too bad, right? We ended up testing until like around 2 a.m. I think, and then obviously we all took a shower, got ready for bed. I deliberated on my final pick, which was Haze Shenron, and then also, yeah, at this time I was like, okay, whatever. I'm gonna go to sleep. I'm gonna get like at least 5 hours, and then we'll wake up, walk to the venue, which is 10 minutes away. But I was just lying there in bed until like 6 a.m. in the morning. I literally couldn't fall asleep. Like the caffeine was so strong. And like I drink a lot of caffeine, but I don't know what it was with this drink, but I literally couldn't fall asleep. And so yeah, basically I went to that venue with only 2 hours of sleep. I didn't feel that bad, to be fair, but there is no way you're like operating with 2 hours of sleep and like performing at your best, right? And then that culminated in a defeat against SJ for Goku of all things and Swiss. And look, to be fair, that guy is a good player. Like I know him, JD, and the main thing is like he is basically like what would you call like if you would call like the top tier one decks like a gun, he was bringing like a knife, which is like the SJ for Goku, right? Tier 3 deck. But basically, he piloted the knife very well. So, even if you're a knife wielder, that doesn't mean you lose to the gun wielder all the time, right? Basically that's what happened. And actually, I made a mistake. So I'm not sure if it was because I was tired or because I was just unfamiliar or what, but I didn't take the 10 seconds to think about it properly. And then he swung 20 to my Vegeta, and I just defended it. And then I realized like a little bit after that it was a really bad decision to do that. And I think that actually cost me the game because I also got unlucky. So I didn't draw the 30k Shenron. And so usually, even if you make small mistakes against a deck like that, it shouldn't make you lose, right? But unfortunately, it did because I'm a bad player. So yeah, I mean that was kind of rough. But apart from that, I think I played well throughout the rest of the day. I locked in, even though I was very anxious because of how dangerous it was to lose early on the Swiss. But yeah, I mean we locked in, and yeah, we managed to win. So um, one of the main things I would say is that when I did manage to make it into the top cut and I saw kind of the bracket and the matchups, I was very confident because I knew that with a BO3, I would be favored, both in terms of like the fact that variance is reduced, and then also because the decks I was facing, generally speaking, my leader is favored into that. And I sort of knew that would be the case going in. So Omega Shenron was a deck that I thought would be the best chances of winning the entire event. And what I mean by that is Omega Shenron was a deck where, because it loses to random decks like Frieza and like Giblin and all of that, like those decks are very unlikely to be seen in the top cut, right? But I am likely to see them in Swiss. And so if I verse too many of them in Swiss, that means that I might not even make top cut. I might not even make top 32 if I verse too many Friezas or whatever, right? But fortunately, I didn't verse them. That was a risk that I took. And, obviously, it doesn't look good if, I scrub out after winning 3 regionals, but I was willing to take that risk, right, and play this deck. And in top cut, I versed Cell, Boo, and Goma. And in my opinion, Omega Shenron's favored to all 3. So definitely, once I was in top cut, I think the gamble paid off. But of course, it was a little bit concerning during Swiss about whether or not I would face meta or if I would face random off-meta aggro decks. So yeah, I mean, I think it worked out well for me. Yeah, so onto the deck profile. So for those of you that don't know what this leader does, it is basically a mill deck. And so what happens is that it can awaken at 6 life instead of the usual 4. And its awaken conditions, you have 7 cards with Shadow Dragon in the traits and 6 life. So it doesn't draw on awaken, and also this card is basically 20k as well when it awakens, which is good. And basically after you've milled your deck, you can use this leader effect, so you can cast a spell for free by putting Shadow Dragon traded cards to the bottom of your deck. So effectively your goal with this deck is to mill your entire deck, and then after that, all the cards that go back into your deck, you know exactly what they are. Of course, there's a random component to it, but for the most part, you can make educated guesses based on, the amount of card draw that you have available to you. So that's basically how the deck operates. In order to do that, we run a lot of mill cards. So the best one in the deck is obviously Black Smoke Dragon. So one cost, a blocker for some reason as well. It has no combo, but that doesn't matter because it's got blocker. You go through the top 3 cards of your deck, they all go to trash except for one Shadow Dragon card, which you add to hand. So this is already a plus 0, not to mention that you have a chance of basically getting a +1 because of blocks and attack. So card's kind of crazy. Next up, we have 4 copies of Vegeta. I don't know where my Vegeta went there. So Vegeta, basically, this is probably the best mill card in the entire deck. So it's not a Shadow Dragon. If it were a Shadow Dragon, it would be completely broken, but even then, it's kind of broken. So on attack, you can add a life to hand, sometimes relevant, and then also you place 3 cards from the top of your deck into the trash when you attack. So if this card lives, it can mill 3, 6, 9, like a huge amount of cards. So it's a priority threat for most decks to deal with. Some decks can't deal with it. And so this helps you thin your deck, and it helps you awaken on turn 6. On turn 2. Because this card can mill maybe 3, this mills 3, and then maybe just combo card from hand, you go 7. So basically, sometimes you get unlucky and you mill Vegetas, or in my case, around 1 pan. But regardless, this is probably like the card that you need to mulligan for. And because of the fact that like these 2 cards are so important, I do run 1 copy pan. So in most games, I want a hard mulligan for all these cards. And so if I don't draw them, I have to mulligan. I'm at the mercy of my draws. So I run 1 pan. I just kind of smooth out the draws. So on my second draw, like basically a mulligan, I have 9 cards, which I'm happy to see. And so if I play this on turn 1, it lets me like cleanse like the extras in my hand and put them in trash, which is where they want to be, as opposed to being in my charge area. And then also, basically, this will help me draw into these 2 as well on the following turns, which is good. And then also, it's 10k combos, so if you get it from the life, you don't feel bad. If you draw it later on, you can charge it, and it doesn't matter, there's not a Shadow Dragon. And then also, on turn 6, you can play this in conjunction with your 5-cost chain, and then basically you can manipulate your draws, because you can play this before, you can play it after, and because it draws cards, you can actually switch your extras for combos. So I really like this card at 1 copy. Okay, next up, we ran 1 copy paste. So this is a card that I was deliberating all night on whether or not to bring it. And the main reason I brought this is because of the existence of Top Cut, and more specifically, the fact that it will be open deck list. So I didn't feel comfortable playing open deck list BO3 without this card. I wanted people to fear this as a potential self-awakener. I know that in most cases, people will just give the respect to this and they won't even attempt it, but I don't even want them to think about attempting it, which is why I brought this. Because obviously, even if you mill this, you can bring it back with the 5-cost Shenron if you're unawakened. So also the fact that like, it's kind of harder to play around 5 self-awakeners versus 4, right? Especially given that Vegeta, when you play it, you might mill other Vegetas, for instance. So that was the main reason I brought it. I would probably cut this with Majin Buu being nerfed in the following patch, but it was fine. Like I didn't really play it much, but again, it was more of a deterrent than like a card that I actually wanted to play. Next up, you have 2 copies of Ace. So basically, this is the one where you mill 2 cards from the top of your deck, and then you place a 2-cost or lower to the bottom of the owner's deck. So this is good against certain decks, usually the aggro decks, so like Frieza, Giblet, and occasionally it's good against Cell as well. So around 2 copies, it's not as essential. Like if you miss it, doesn't mean you lose the game right away. We're on 4 copies of this. This I do think is essential. Basically, instead of being cost 2 that goes to the bottom deck, it's cost 4 or lower that goes back to hand. And so this hits a lot more cards, but it's a little bit less potent, right? Because basically the other one's like a +1. This is like a +0, but it's tempo efficient. But you need this in order to out a lot of the difficult decks of the meta. So obviously it hits like 3-cost Goku. It hits from the Namaku deck. It hits every Buu card. It hits 4-cost cells, so they can't go the 1-cost cell chain against you. Basically, this card is very flexible, and it's 10k, so, basically, I think, you need to run 4 copies in this manner. And next up, we have the Pig package, so 4 copies of Natural and Shenron, and 4 copies of the 3-cost version. So, effectively, when you play this, draw a card, discard 1, then you can pop it and bring this back from the trash, and then draw a card and swing 20. And so this is very good at turn 4. We can play 2 of these, or this plus Vegeta, and you can draw, pressure the life, etc. And it's very good at burst attack as well. And also, basically, in the late game, you like to have Pig on like turn 7, so you can play this with your 5 costs, so you can basically draw into the cards that you put into like, the end of your stack, right? So effectively, like, you do the 5 cost first, and then like the super combos are roughly in that area, and you can play this and you can draw 2 super combos. So basically, this card is very good, like when and you're tracking like what you're putting into the bottom of your deck. Okay, so next up we have 4 copies of Sign Shenron. So it's basically like the 5 cost chain, right? So on play, you mill 2 cards from the top of your deck to trash, and then you place 7 cards from your trash with Shadow Dragon back into the bottom of your deck in a random order, and then it lets you bring out this card, right? Which is the boss monster of the deck. So this is the whole point. Like you want to mill your deck so that basically you can manipulate the bottom of your deck to have 7 extras, and then you eventually reach that point and you basically +7, which is crazy. Of course, it's not that ideal. Like, I only pulled that off like maybe a few times this weekend. You don't have to go for like the +7 or whatever. It's only if like the cards align perfectly, because most of the time it is tied to like how many Vegetas you're able to stick. But yeah, obviously if you can get it, it's very good. And of course, it's a 35k, can't be removed by opponent's skills, basically. And then it combos with this extra here, minus energy Powerball. So it's free to play with your leader skill, and it restands like your 35k into a 55k double strike. So that's kind of the way that you usually win. And then apart from that, we also run 4 copies of the Shenron. So this is just the super combo of the deck, and it is a Shadow Dragon, so it can be recycled using leader ability. Which makes it so like against decks which aim to kill you, you shuffle these back in, you draw back into them, and then you have a huge amount of super combos in hand. Not to mention this super combo, which is this kind of Shadow Dragon, and gain 20k, and you shuffle all 1-drops to the bottom of the enemy deck. And so basically, this card is like an extra, an extra super combo. So you can hold many super combos in hand, and you can recycle them and bring it back with Saint Shenron. So yeah, this card's crazy. And then we have Pot of Greed. So Dragon Thunder, basically draw 2 cards and your opponent can't activate blocker. That effect is actually quite relevant, especially against blue. And then the final 3 cards is Burst Attack. So it's just required for those aggro mid-range matchups where in a lot of decks in the meta right now, like the cards don't go above 5 cost, so this basically hits everything. And so you definitely need to run 3, if nothing else, as a deterrent. But yeah, overall, I think this list was very comfortable for me. I think the only card I would maybe change after the ban list is maybe Haze. I had a lot of respect for certain players to be running this, so Max would be one of them. But if it weren't for that, like maybe I would just run a third ace or something like that. Honestly, like the last card, it doesn't really matter that much. But yeah, I mean, obviously, with a deck like this, though, it does matter a little bit more because any one individual card that you put in, you could potentially cycle back and guarantee to draw back into it, right? But yeah, I mean, this card I was definitely a little bit on the fence about, but it's fine. And yeah, so that's basically the deck. And so I think I did mention earlier that I put together a guide for this. I'm not sure if I'll publish it. Obviously at the time it was just for serious. But I think, if there are people interested, I could probably publish that, especially people who want to bring this deck to Nats. And then also, I will have a Metafy open as well, so for coaching. And I do appreciate that. Obviously, this is coming out pretty close to Nationals, but if anyone does want some last minute help with that, I'm definitely happy to lend a hand for that for a price, of course. But yeah, closing thoughts. I'm pretty happy with how this year went in general for Fusion World. I definitely think I practiced the most for this out of any play in Australia, and I think the skill component. I think I'm pretty skilled at this game. Might be a biased opinion though, but even then, I think I got very lucky. Definitely, I think given the way the formats work, if I lose a single game in some areas, like especially in regionals, I don't get the win. And then also for championships as well, like even a small thing changing could have cost me the run, right? I mean, even in the finals against Joseph on Goma, like he won game 2, right? So I could have bricked game 3, and then all of a sudden, this deck profile is about me making second place at Nats instead of first place. So, yeah, like I consider myself pretty lucky that I had the luck as well to kind of enable like these victories too. And then apart from that, obviously shout out to all the boys in Sydney and Melbourne, everyone that I talk to on a regular basis. So rather than naming everyone, I think it's better to just believe that I'm referring to one of you. Even though a lot of you guys are considering Riftbound, but I know you'll be back. You'll always be back. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully I'll be able to put out more content like this in the future. I always kind of promise this at the end of my videos, and if you did sub in the first instance, then you have actually enjoyed a bit of Fusion World content, haven't you? So that is to say that it's worthwhile to like and subscribe as well. So yeah, hopefully if any of you do need coaching, you can check it out on Metafy. My season's over, but I am very proficient on a lot of different decks, so definitely if you're playing boost, cells, sign, even if you're playing off meta deck, definitely hit me up. But otherwise, see you guys. Thanks for watching.